You reap what you sow. Once upon a time, in a village called Zaranu, there lived a man called Gafanta. He had a wife popularly known as Sungumi. They had a son called Wasuku, who was 12 years old. They were very poor, so much that they lived without good shelter, adequate clothing, and enough food. Their life was so miserable that people neglected them and even showed them some level of hatred. In fact, they mocked them for being poor. Gafanta and his family endured the hard conditions they found themselves in, always bearing in mind that God's favor will soon strike their home. Despite his financial predicament, he vowed not to indulge in begging. To him, begging brings nothing but calamity and a lack of self-respect. He concentrated on his small farming activities. During one of the rainy seasons, Gafanta enlarged his farming activities and worked towards it with the hope that it will result in a bumper harvest. His wife, Sungumi, was always on his side, encouraging him and even participating in some of the farming activities. His son was not left out. He helped his father with farm clearing, sowing, and hoeing. One day, Gafanta visited his farm and was impressed with how the plants germinated. Therefore, he said to himself, "Poverty will soon perish in our family, and we will soon smile." However, the people of Zaranu village were jealous of him because of his farm. They wished a calamity to befall him. His neighbor, Bagadu, who was his greatest enemy, even said to him, "You will reap nothing but a poor harvest." He replied, "Good and bad harvests are in the hands of God, and we don't have control over our destiny." Gafanta's farm became the best in Zaranu village. Therefore, he had a bumper harvest. The farm even became the subject of discussion. His wife advised him to share some of the farm produce with neighbors and the less privileged. He accepted her advice and also planned to give a large portion of it as charity to the needy, especially to his neighbor Bagadu. His jealous neighbor Bagadu had a sleepless night planning how to arrange with thieves to steal all of Gafanta's farm produce. But when he thought that if they were caught, they would be killed, he said, "This is not the best idea." He also thought of attacking Gafanta and inflicting injuries on him. But he said, "I won't do it because I don't want him to die. I want him to lead a miserable life." He finally decided to burn Gafanta's house to ashes, including his harvested farm produce. "This is the best idea," he said to himself. He jumped off from his wooden bed at the middle of the night and carried a fire stick. He tiptoed to the house of Gafanta and ignited fire. Before the realization of Gafanta, the fire became severe so much that it has burnt the house to ashes, including his farm produce. However, luckily enough, he and his wife Sungumi and his son Wasuku were all safe. Gafanta was saddened by the calamity that befell him. His wife came to him and consoled him over the incident. She said, "God Almighty is aware of this catastrophe, and He will soon come to our aid." He was relieved upon hearing her words of consolation. However, his neighbor, Bagadu, pretended as if he was not responsible for the arson attack. He went to meet Gafanta and expressed his sympathy over the incident. Gafanta was touched by this and thanked him for the concern shown. Gafanta had no option but to construct another house using sticks. Therefore, he, his wife, and their son, Wasuku, went to the bush to fetch a large quantity of sticks that would be used for constructing the house. In building the house, he laid out rows of sticks across the top and bottom edges, glued single rows of support that met at the middle, and added another support stick to each row, connecting them at the center. He finally laid smaller walls together that had support sticks on the sides and glued half sticks at the middle to join them together. The house became very beautiful and attractive. Gafanta stuck to his vow not to beg anyone for assistance. As such, he started selling firewood. His wife Sungumi always gave him support and encouragement. His son Wasuku helped him by carrying an axe to the bush for cutting down trees. He used the money to buy foodstuff and other necessities. His neighbor, Bagadu, expected to see Gafanta begging in shame and misery, but to his greatest dismay, it wasn't so. In fact, Gafanta's business had improved to the extent that people from the whole community relied on him for firewood. He bought new clothes for himself, his wife, and Wasuku. They now ate 3 times a day. He also assisted his neighbor, Bagadu, with some food items. In order to diversify his means of livelihood, Gafanta bought 2 she-goats and 1 he-goat, hoping that within 2 years, the she-goats will give birth to many goats. Bagadu became jealous because of Gafanta's financial stability. He made up his mind to kill him. However, one day when Gafanta and his son Wasuku were coming back from the bush, Bagadu masked himself in disguise, attacked and stabbed him using a sharp knife. Gafanta cried out loudly in pain and fell down. His son rushed home and informed his mother. She left what she was doing and quickly ran to her husband. She found him in severe pain, with blood gushing out from his stomach. She covered the stomach with a veil, which stopped the blood flow. She sought assistance from a passerby and took him to a native doctor. In the evening of the incident, his neighbor, Bagadu, went and sympathized with him as if he wasn't the one who had carried out the attack. All of Gafanta's property was sold to settle the hospital bill. His health condition gradually improved and he later became fully recovered. He asked his wife about the kind of business to venture into since he had vowed not to beg anyone for financial assistance. "I would rather die in the course of making ends meet than beg," he vowed again. She advised him to return to his usual maize farming activity. According to her, farming and rearing animals are among the best and oldest professions in the world, and there's God's blessings in them. He was convinced by her statement and finally agreed to her opinion. Gafanta returned to his farming activity with all his might. He did everything humanly possible to achieve a bumper harvest. His wife, Sungumi, always gave him support. She never once became reluctant or demoralized in giving him assistance of all kinds. She always believed that God's help would soon come to the family. Gafanta's maize farm was the best ever in the history of Zaranu village, with the highest yield. His house was filled to capacity with the farm produce after harvesting. However, this abundance led him to construct silos for preservation. He gave out a large portion of it to the needy, especially to his neighbor, Bagadu. Due to a disease called common rust affecting maize farms that year, most farmers had poor harvest, leading to a maize shortage and price increase. This situation enabled Gafanta to become a major maize distributor and seller in Zaranu and neighboring communities. Out of sympathy, his wife Sungumi advised him to sell maize at an affordable price, which he did. The villagers appreciated his kindness and prayed for his continued success. His son Wasuku handled the accounting. Bagadu, Gafanta's jealous neighbor, grew frustrated with Gafanta's success. He sought a soothsayer's help to harm Gafanta. However, on his way to meet the soothsayer, Bagadu rested under a mango tree and was bitten by a snake. He cried out in pain and passerby took him to a native doctor. Despite selling his properties for treatment, Bagadu's condition didn't improve. He became blind and disabled. The villagers shunned him and he was forced to beg due to his poverty and lack of food. Gafanta, on the other hand, became the richest person in Zaranu village and its neighboring communities. He was loved and admired by all due to his simplicity and humility. His wife Sungumi and son Wasuku also thrived as village entrepreneurs. Together, they led a fulfilled life filled with happiness and contentment. One day, Bagadu met with Gafanta and confessed to the atrocities he had committed against him, including his intention to kill him and the snake bites he suffered on his way to seek a soothsayer's help. he begged for forgiveness. Gafanta was surprised at that. He said, "I have forgiven you, but you will reap what you sow."